So hi, everyone. Welcome. I am Evelyn Moon. I am the Director of Learning and Content Strategy here at Good Grief. And just like every other time we get to hang out with you, I just want to start from a place of gratitude. There's a lot of things that we could be doing on a Thursday, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening where you're at. I am just grateful that you chose to spend this time with us. I am excited for this topic as well, managing grief on parent holidays. This session is part of our Good Grief Community webinar series. So every school year, New Jersey school year, so that's from September through June, we'd like to bring you content from our center. So sometimes you see us, but sometimes you see some of our friends and experts from outside of Good Grief, like you will today. I also want to introduce my colleague, Annette, who's also on here.
Hi, everybody. And I'm just echoing Evelyn's remarks. I'm so grateful to have you all here. I'm so excited to listen to Dr. LaRue and really play a part in giving you some tools that you can use as you go throughout your day and through the Father's Day and Mother's Day holidays.
Yes, absolutely. And I see we've got some folks from Catholic Charities, schools, hospice chaplain. Welcome. Feel free to hop in the chat. Let us know who you are, where you're from. Hopefully, if you're here, you know who we are and what we do. But for those of you who may be new to our community, we are a nonprofit. We've been around since 2004. So this is a big milestone year for us. And our mission is to build resilience in children, strengthen families, and empower communities to grow from loss and adversity. For most of our history, we have been providing completely free and unlimited peer support programs to grieving children who've experienced the death of a parent, caregiver, or sibling, and everyone else in the home. Our Good Grief kids go from age 3 to 30. So we cover sort of a broad part of childhood and young adulthood. And we do this in our centers in Morristown and Princeton, and some young adult work virtually as well. But we've been expanding, working with schools, working with children's hospitals, healthcare, funeral industry, corporations. I mean, really, we just want to take the information, all the tools and resources, and put them in the hands of people who can help us to live in a more grief-informed world. I mean, ultimately, we want it so that no child, no person ever has to grieve alone. So this is our work. We have our family support services in our centers. We have our schools initiative. So that has been very important. New Jersey recently passed a grief bill mandating grief education for grades 8 through 12 under the banner of health and physical education. So we're very excited to support schools and current, former, and future school partners in implementing the needs of this bill. Every year we do an annual Spring Institute in March. It's in person. If you're in New Jersey, we'd love to have you there. We do PD and training, parent and caregiver work, and then we also do our community webinar series.
Thank you, Evelyn. And I have the distinct honor and pleasure to present our presenter and give you a little bit of background on her. So Dr. Damita SunWolf LaRue is a health and grief psychologist. She's a very sought after speaker, so we're very lucky to have her with us. And she's the creator of the Journey to Health methodology. Through her work, Dr. Damita has also helped many women struggling with chronic health conditions as they apply their own intuition in I guess, Western medicine world that we have, right? She is also the founder and CEO of DLA Psychology Center in Chicago. She is also a fellow in thanatology, which is, for those of you who don't know, it's really the study of death, dying, and bereavement. Extremely interesting. I had to actually look that up. I was like, oh, that's cool. She also has advanced training in clinical hypnosis. She's an Indian Health Service Fellow, an Edward A. Boucher Graduate Honor Society Fellow. Her clinical research has focused on culturally sensitive therapeutic care for Native Americans, and she's worked in schools and villages in Alaska, substance abuse treatment programs, community health centers, acute patient psychiatric hospitals, and the VA healthcare system. So please join me in welcoming our presenter, Dr. LaRue.
So I want to take you back in time to a moment in my life where I'm in LA with my daughter who just started college, and we're on a mother-daughter vacation. And it's her first semester of college. I'm in college at that point. So we needed a chill out vacation. And we start to talk about her siblings. Now, she had never met her siblings. They died before she was born. And so she wanted to know more. So we engaged in that conversation. In this quiet space, in a beautiful environment, my favorite, the beach. My daughter starts to draw. She's an artist. And she created a drawing that for her was the epitome of what she felt and what she connected to with her siblings. So in this space, she allows herself to connect to her siblings and at the same time kind of determine for her what it might look like. This is the creation that she created in that moment. It is, as a Cherokee woman, we were actually talking about our traditions. She created this beautiful drawing that represents our culture. And as my native name is SunWolf, she has a wolf with the background of the sun. She added 4 feathers, 2 girls and 2 boys. So what we did with this is many years later, so we move in time to, that's on my refrigerator for probably a decade, that drawing. And we're in Cherokee land in Oklahoma, and we're there for the holiday season. And now it's time to do something else with that. So we decide that this is the perfect place for us both to get tattoos. So I decide that I want it to be what my daughter has created, because I carry, of course, the memories of all my children all the time. However, I wanted something symbolic that was really concrete and with me. So we went to the tattoo parlor and she got her own version of a tattoo that connected her to the things that she needed. And I got this tattoo. Now it has changed a little bit over time. Before it was black and white, and then it moved to color. So, you know, it progressed as financially I could afford to let it progress. However, this is an incredible example of allowing our children to be involved in the process of our grief. Because although she never met her siblings, she still knew they existed. She could still feel the emotions of her mom when they went up and down. And so what we want to talk about and introduce, if you haven't heard of them before, is first and foremost continuing bonds. It's how we continue to connect to the person who died. So we have this continuing relationship, and the relationship can transform. For most of us, not everyone, but it's a myth that we have to close and cut off the relationship with the deceased. For some people, that is the way they deal with their grief, and that's okay because we all do it differently. However, for others, this ongoing attachment is like this motivating energy that helps transform ourselves and the siblings of the child who died. So we can connect to the deceased in our mind, in our memory, in our heart, that they're in heaven, they're in the clouds. We can go to the cemetery physically if that's a part of our tradition. And that helps foster that ongoing relationship. So as you're listening to me talk about continuing bonds, I would love for you to type in the chat ideas you might have that are kind of popping up right now or bubbling up for continuing bonds with the child you've lost. Because these activities help us to preserve and continue to develop interactive relationships with the person who died. Instead of detaching from the child who died, these continuing bonds, it's a natural human attachment, and it's this ongoing interrelationship. Some of the ways we continue bonds is dreams of the child who died, talking to the child who died, or thinking of the child who died. Believing that the child is looking out for the people who are living, or visiting places where we feel close to the child, whether it's their favorite park or playground, the school they attended. Continuing bonds we can also use in representing some of the characteristics of the deceased within the family. We often think of the person who died, and as parents, we think about what kind of adult they may have been. Siblings think about what it might have been like to grow up with a sibling that was closer to them in age. We also might continue bonds by connecting to the interest of that child, or feeling better when we talk to that child, or communicating to the child. So these continuing bonds can help us stay connected, and they also help us feel better. So through a process of continuing bonds, it's also a form of self-care because we feel better through that bond. So what we're going to talk about are 3 strategies to use when we are parenting that acknowledges our children's needs and their grief experiences. Strategy number 1 is to understand. Research shows us that if there's only one thing we could do that will help someone, regardless of what they're going through, grief, stress, anxiety, anything they're addressing or feeling, is to seek first to understand them. Because understanding helps them feel like they're connected, they're not alone. And our children, like us, have different thoughts and feelings when they're grieving. So one of the feelings that they come up with or that they have is shock and denial. Sometimes when they find out that the person has died, they may not think that they're really dead, or they might behave as if things are just fine, they're normal. And what it's important to do is talk to our children honestly and directly. That helps them to understand, because we do it on a developmentally appropriate age. Whether they're 3 or whether they're 30, our conversations are going to be different, and yet they're going to be helpful to them, because what we want to do is encourage them to feel their emotions without hiding them. And if a child is not acting in a way we expect, they're not upset or crying, that's okay too. So we need to allow our children to be who they are, grieve in the way they grieve, and allow them to express the emotions that they experience when they feel comfortable and safe. Another way that our children deal with grief is disorganization and panic, especially when it's a sibling. It's, okay, well, my brother or sister died, so am I going to die? And they become scared, insecure, confused, overwhelmed. And in those ways, they can act out, which is their emotions happen behaviorally. They become irritable, hyperactive. They're not focused on their schoolwork. They have a stomach ache or a headache, or they get in trouble, or they struggle with their sleep or their food. And instead of reprimanding our children, it's helpful to reassure them. And even saying, even though I feel sad, I'm going to be here to take care of you. This is a safe space to talk about your emotions. And if it's a smaller child or even a teen, and they're worried because their sibling died from something medically related, reassurance of, you and I both went to the doctor for a checkup and we're healthy. Or reassurance that even though the doctors could not make your sister better, most people live a long and healthy life. So providing our children this comfort and reassurance. Sometimes our children have explosive emotions because they think that their life is out of control. They feel rage, blame, terror, jealousy sometimes of the child who died. So instead of discouraging the expression of these feelings or being punitive, what we want to do is to encourage a healthy expression of those emotions while also setting appropriate limits. So Lowenstein talks about a 3-step process where we label the feelings of the child. You're angry because your sister is not here to play ball with you. Setting a limit. It's okay to be angry, but it's not okay to hit your brother. And then giving them an alternative. You can let your anger out by punching a pillow. So we're helping them kind of process through that, because when they're in explosive emotion, they're not in a place of being able to think clearly. They're emoting. So helping them to understand what's happening and how to, through our communication, express their emotions in a healthy way. Oftentimes there's guilt because children blame themselves when somebody around them dies, especially when they're younger and they haven't developed yet through the progression of age and maturity. So they often will think it's all my fault. When I was playing with Sally Sue, I wish she was dead, and now Sally Sue's dead. And they feel that guilt. And oftentimes parents will say, you weren't responsible, and they'll kind of like push it off or avoid discussing the child's guilt. And that just reinforces the guilt for the child. They need someone to have a conversation so that they don't push those feelings down underground, and they are able to have opportunities to talk openly about their feelings and to help them understand their thoughts and behaviors did not cause the death of the other child. Sadness, of course, is an emotion that we see with our children. And as children begin to acknowledge the reality of the loss, they begin to think, well, they're gone, they're never coming back. So they can become depressed, alone, hopeless, and they can cry or withdraw. And those are normal emotions. And what we want to do is make sure we encourage our child to openly express their feelings of sadness. And also honor the fact that you and I may cry together, and that's okay. We both feel sad right now. And that allows them to feel that comfort. And if they don't have words for what they're going through, and this can be super little children, and this can be older children, heck, it can be us as adults, is we need to draw it out sometimes. Doesn't mean we have to be an artist. We just want to draw out what our sadness feels like or looks like. And then we look at acceptance. So we don't get over grief. Grief changes us forever. That's just the reality of grief. So what it is allowing them to accept it and help them think that although my brother or sister is gone and I miss them, I'm gonna be okay. And research shows us this term called grief attacks. And grief attacks are when these strong feelings are triggered by special dates or anniversaries. So like a birthday or even the anniversary of the death of the sibling. So if we can find ways to help our children prepare for these, that's super helpful. So even saying, tomorrow's your birthday, and you might have some mixed up feelings. You may feel happy and excited, but you also could feel sad and angry because your brother's not here. So whatever you are feeling, it's normal and okay. So reinforcing that they're okay and that these feelings are not right or wrong. So remember that our children do grieve, and how they grieve is different than us. They're children. Developmentally, they're in a different place. So often they express their feelings through behavior. So our job is to help them have a healthier way to grieve. And by doing that, we allow them to feel their feelings. So acknowledge what they're thinking, validate their feelings, respond sensitively to how they're behaving instead of screaming at them or reprimanding them. And that way we can help our children deal with their grief. Strategy number 2 is preparing. So we're talking about parental holidays. We don't want to wake up on the morning of a holiday and have no plan and have not prepared because we're ignoring. That actually intensifies our grief. It makes the house feel more chaotic, and then depression and anxiety and then all these emotions happen. So preparation is crucial. And we want to take into account the cultural factors and the cultural content and impact of how we all in this family deal with death. And culture has a huge definition. It's not just one thing. It's where we came from, our ancestry, our beliefs, our traditions, our customs, the way we think about our life and our work, how we build our community. So thinking about how our culture influences our view of ourselves and others, our place in the world. And so when we can maintain as much of our past culture into these parenting holidays, it gives everyone a connection to things before, knowing that some of our culture may transition over time, especially after the death of a child. However, it helps us to start that preparation process. And then we talk about and think about rituals and routines. And they're so important because they provide predictability and a sense of safety for all members of the family. So just like morning hugs and bedtime routines begin and end a day, they're sort of the bookends. They create a rhythm and they create expectations. They move us through time and they mark transitions. So we continue to build or create new ways that rituals and routines can be enhanced in our family life for these parenting holidays. So some of the things we can do as we're preparing, we're going to look at what fits our child, what fits their personality, their energy, where they are developmentally, where they are in their lives, because we want to engage the child or children in the house in activities. We want to leave those screens behind to get enough of that. And we want to be creative together as a family. And creativity does not mean you have to be an artist and sit down and draw a beautiful portrait. What creativity is it can be drawing or painting or coloring. It can also be physical activity, creating a flower or herb garden, going to the beach and making sandcastles, creating a new game as a family, and then everyone playing it with the rules that you've collaborated with the children on, so they are participating in the process you're creating together. We can make collages. We can do songs that we sing together. We can create a playlist of songs. We can scrapbook. We can do memory jars. We can do rituals, memorializations. There's so many things that we can do. And at the end of this presentation, there's some resources for activities that you can link into and look at. You can also, of course, do our friend Google, because Google knows everything. You also can prepare by thinking of, okay, how do I enjoy nature? Maybe my family is more focused on outside time. So going for a walk together, playing hopscotch on the sidewalk, doing yoga, jumping rope, anything that moves our body. So these are all important preparations. Then as we've decided what we want to do and what's the best for our family and come up with an agenda, we implement them. And this is some pictures of some artwork that was created by young children to help them express where they were. And so even asking our child what it is that they're feeling today. The one in the middle was a volcano that was created by a very young child. And it shows their feelings, this volcano, and then it's the dam, it's the sad, and then this person. The teenager who created their tears helped them remember. So it's really important to kind of see in the child's mind, and the way to do that is through activity. And then of course our artwork on our far left was created by a young child whose brother had died and how they were feeling. We also have other strategies we can do when we have older children. So listing what grief has taught you about life and coming up with creative poems. So there's things that we can do that really touch our child in a way that allows them to express their grief. And we're not sitting idly behind on the sofa and they're all at the dining room table doing this. We're engaged with them. This is a family event because we're participating as well, because they want to see that their parent is also engaging in these events and they know you're grieving. So don't try to hide it. Be real with it. And you're creating your poems or what it has taught you or your pictures of how you're feeling. These are important. You want to engage with your child, not separate from. So then we move into linking objects. Linking objects are symbolic objects that the survivor keeps. And it provides a means through which the relationship can be maintained on an external basis. So for me, when my grandma died, I got her wedding ring. And on days where I'm really missing her, still to this day, I will either wear the ring on my finger or I will wear it around my neck because it's a way to feel that extra connection. And it's a positive and healthy way to express your grief. So oftentimes the linking objects are chosen for 4 categories. One is something that belonged to the deceased. So in my instance, the wedding ring. Also, it can be a stuffed animal that the child had, especially if the child that we've lost is younger. So really kind of identifying. And then something with which the deceased extended their senses. And to me, that was written so weird, but it's like the idea of a camera. So if Johnny had a camera and he loved to take pictures, and then Johnny dies, that camera extends Johnny's visual senses, and it's something that we hold on to, and that for us, it helps us kind of imagine and be with seeing the world through Johnny's eyes. Then, of course, there's representations of the deceased, such as a photograph. And then also for some people, it is something that was on hand when they heard the news of the person's death or when they first saw the deceased body. I'm very cautious with number 4, personally, because this can also, you have to be mindful of what the meaning is for the child and for yourself when it comes to linking objects. So the 4th one, we don't want to be connected to the trauma of the loss. We want to be connected to the person and the hope and the positive feelings that we have for that person. So kind of keeping that in mind. And as you're hearing me talk about these linking objects, type in the chat some ideas of what linking objects might look like for you with a child you've lost or anyone else you may have lost in life. With the linking objects, when we're talking about parenting holidays, as a family, we can come together and discuss what linking objects are, how they connect us to the child who's died. And we can work together to help each family member identify a linking object that has meaning for them. Sometimes kids instantly know, and sometimes it takes a little while for them to kind of get their creative juices flowing. So sometimes they need help with us throwing ideas out and saying, no, no, oh yeah, I like that one. Also working together to kind of find a linking object for the family as a whole. So thinking about, where do we really miss that person the most? When is it that we really want to be connected? Do we want to add a new picture of the whole family when that person was still alive in the dining room so that they're always in the dining room with us? What is it that we want to do as a family? And having that conversation and collaboration so that all family members are involved in that conversation. Also identifying this linking object helps us to not only connect with the person, but also by verbally talking as a family about what that object means, it ingrains the positive healing of the grief. Not that we're ever healed, not that it's ever going to go away. It just changes in intensity. Through the exploration and the identification and the conversation about the linking objects, the family then is able to connect and process maybe even additional levels of the grief that they all have. So it's a great activity that can be done together. So how do I plan for my next parent holiday? Well, we all know one's coming up this weekend. So kind of thinking about, what is my plan? So we can utilize the 3 strategies that we talked about: the understanding, the preparation, and the implementation. And this preparation is what decreases anxiety and allows us to set expectations. However, as the parent, we first need to think about, what do I need on that day? Because we set the tone for the family. Children watch us. So what is it that I need? Okay, I'm really tired. I'm going to need to sleep late. And then I can get up and we can do this agenda that I'm creating. And yet, I'm thinking normally I kind of get really tired around 2, and Emotionally, I know when I'm tired, my emotions are higher. So around 2, I'm going to need a break. So then talking with your partner or talking with a friend, a family member, and saying, you know, at 2 o'clock, can you take over with the kids and give me a little space? I need to go on a walk. I need to meditate. I need to talk to my child who's died in the backyard. I need to do something for me. And then I'll come back. So really preparing for taking care of yourself as the parent, because if you don't take care of yourself, then all things kind of start to fizzle out. Then also thinking about, what do your children need? How long has it been since the other child has died? And where are they in their grief journeys? What are they needing? And by thinking through your needs and the children's needs, and then reaching out for support from another adult to help us, we're able to look at the rituals, the routines, and the traditions, and think about, what did we do in the past? And do I want to do that same thing that we used to do? Or do I want to do some of it and modify some other pieces of it? And then we also think about that broad definition of culture and our beliefs and who we are in the world and how we've raised our families and what that looks like for us and how that plays a part in the rituals, routines, and traditions. By attending this event today, you're able to find some new ideas and go, this one works for me, this one doesn't. You're able to use resources that you're provided with to expand your thoughts and your learnings about grief for yourself and grief for your children. And then we take that plan and then we start to set realistic expectations ahead of time. So we don't want to be super mom or super dad. That's unhelpful. Be realistic. If it's the first year, you need to be realistic that you may need extra time alone. You need to be thoughtful of the energy levels of your children and their ability and capacities as well. So setting realistic expectations is incredibly helpful. And then we create predictability by communication and action. So we communicate to the family what our plan is for the parent holiday. And by doing this, we also engage. So as a family, maybe we're sitting at dinner. We're saying, you know, Mother's Day is coming up this weekend, and I kind of wanted to talk about my thoughts and what I'm kind of needing and see where you guys are. And so we're collaborating. Now, our super young kids may not be able to verbalize what they need. However, we have a good idea. The more we can engage our children in this process, the more they feel a part of it, the more their grief is validated. And so by setting predictability, we're able to decrease their distress, because if they're at school, daycare, wherever, they know the parent holiday is coming because they've done some sort of art activity or something. And so now they're like, what's going to happen? It's Mother's Day and I don't know how mom's going to do. What's going to happen? It's Father's Day and I'm worried about it. So we provide that predictability by communication. And then we kind of set the environment. And what that means is, for our children, the home environment is set by the parents. It's influenced by what the parent feels and how they behave. Because children read parents. They don't have to always have our words. They're like, I know mommy's mad right now. I know daddy's sad right now. Even if mommy and daddy aren't saying those words. They watch us. So when we set the environment, knowing that we're the influence, that's the reason why setting this expectation level is so very important, because we're not going to be perfect. So we have to let ourselves off the hook, provide grace to ourselves, while also thinking and planning along the way. If we can create activities that is sort of on an agenda. And I'm not talking a rigid agenda. At 8:15, we're going to eat breakfast. And at 8:30, we're going to start doing an art project. Nothing like that. More fluid based on how everybody's doing when they wake up. However, having these activities in an agenda and then kind of chunking them. So when you do a artistic and activity, it's going to be more quiet. You're not going to be moving your body as much. You may be chatting, but there's lack of movement. So if you have an activity that is artistic in nature, setting a timer based on our children's age and attention level. So for some children, it might be 10 minutes. For other children, they may be the quiet child that loves to do art and they totally get absorbed into it and they can do it for hours. So finding a time frame that's appropriate for your child and your family. Not going over 45 minutes is ideal. And the reason for that is it's exhausting to be in too much emotion. So allowing it to change. 30 minutes is typically the best. I know with my grandchildren, that's what I do. And then when you have a more non-movement activity, like an artistic activity, alternating with a movement activity. So where we can go and run out in the yard, where we can do yoga together, where we can move our bodies, or we can go out and buy the flowers that we're going to plant or plant the flowers in the garden, so that there's this let's see, an up and down of movement, because children need that. The emotion gets all inside and they got to express it, and they express it through movement. Otherwise, we're going to have some what would be perceived as acting out behaviors, which are really them just saying, oh, this is too much for me, I need a break. So going back to that understanding strategy that we talked about. Thinking about linking objects, kind of coming up with some ideas and then kind of throwing them out to our children as a family and seeing what their ideas are. We don't want to be the one that is saying, you need stuffy number 2 that has the teddy bear with the gold ring on its hand. You know, it's not that way, because it needs to have meaning. So each person in the family needs to decide what that linking object is for them and how it has meaning for them. And then as we explore and continue to talk with our children about continuing bonds, we share with them what some of ours are, knowing that it is a form of self-care because it's that connection to the child who has died. And it makes us feel better to know that we're able to talk to them and tell them stories or tell them about our day. So helping our children be able to find ways that they want to continue those bonds as well, and inviting them to tell their dreams. Oftentimes children get them in their dreams. They'll be like, I dreamed of Sally Sue last night and she did this and that, or we played in this way. And that's great because that's the way they're continuing their bond. And remember, your self-care helps you and your children. So you really have to make that a priority. Setting the environment in the house is kind of on the shoulders of the adults. And so if we're not taking care of ourselves and doing proper self-care, then we're not able to set an environment that reflects healthy grieving and happiness and supportive environments. So as we plan for the next parent holiday, some things to think about. Parents often have concerns that death will negatively impact their children's ability to grow into healthy, functioning adults. Yet, when we are mindful of being honest with our emotions, we prepare for these events, such as the parenting holidays. We connect with our children by maintaining our traditions within our culture, actively using continuing bonds as a family, identifying linking objects that are important to each family member in their own way, and providing a healthy way for us and our children to grieve and grow without avoiding or dismissing the reality of the death of our child. These are such key pieces to planning for our next parent holiday. And they're key pieces to helping our children grieve in healthy ways. We need to kind of take perfection off the table, unrealistic, back to setting realistic expectations. We're not perfect parents. We're not going to be. And there's no way of perfectly handling any parent holiday or any other holiday. We each do the best we can. So if you're thinking, oh, I wish I would have done that last year, or oh, I'm beating myself up because I didn't do X or Y, let it go. Be here in this moment, give yourself grace, and remember your own self-care in every way, especially through these continuing moments. Because parents who grieve in healthy ways equal children who grieve in healthy ways. So I'm wrapping up because of two things. One is I want to make sure we have some time for any of your comments. I have not seen any of the chats. So any of your comments. So I'm sure Evelyn or Nat will help us with that. Because I want to make sure that you're able to get some feedback or some just being able to have your ideas shared with the audience as a whole. Because it's not about Dr. Damita and her only ideas. I want it to be collaborative, just like when we celebrate these holidays with our children. I will show you the next few slides. These are resources. So one resource page is focused on activities. The next resource page is focused on holidays. The next one is on parent holidays, which is our topic today. Then there's resources for self-care. And that is vital, not just for us, also for our children. It's for the whole family. Resources for supporting our grieving siblings. And then websites and books for grief. There are so many out there. The last thing I want anyone to feel is alone and lost. So hopefully these resources can help look at different ways that you can connect in healthy ways for you and your family. Yoga Pretzels is wonderful. I have a yoga card deck for my grandchildren here. And when we're having a less than manageable moment, then we pull out those yoga cards and everybody starts to do yoga poses and breathe. So it's ways to engage us, not just on these parent holidays, but in all of our days. And then here's the references for some of the information that came from our presentation today. So I'm going to be quiet and let Evelyn share with us some of the things that are on chat. And I'm also going to pull down the screen share so I can see people's faces.
Yes, so I think a lot of this did resonate. You know, folks had some ideas about linking objects, items. You know, someone had shared, oh, there it is, Rachel, that a family they know has a special ornate candle holder. They light a candle when they're together to represent the loved one. Annette was talking about our volcano room. When you had that volcano picture up, you know, we do have a space to honor those feelings and that energy of our grieving young people. You know, the young people who come to us have experienced the death of either a parent, a caregiver, or a sibling. And they have a lot of different needs. And some of those are physical, and it feels like an eruption.
Absolutely, it does feel like an eruption. At the Dougie Center, which is in Portland, it's fantastic. I've never been in a place like that before in my life. And we were there for a conference, and so we all were taken from the conference over to the Dougie Center to play and to experience the situation as children. And they had this it was a soft room. So anything you did, whatever your emotions were, you weren't going to get hurt. And it was okay to feel them, because oftentimes as parents or as adults in the world, we'll say, this child needs to act this way. And they just need to feel it and get it out, because once it's out, then it's over for them. So it's really helpful to have these different areas where they can do these fun things. Another thing at the Dougie Center they had was this place where you could put on different costumes, and everybody got to play and be different. And that helped them to either be the persona of the person who died, or be themselves talking to or being with the person who died. So there's so many awesome ways. Music, getting them to even beat a drum, doesn't have to be musical. You just beat a drum. So it's really important to be able to have those. I'm so excited that you guys have the volcano room. That sounds amazing.
We love Dougie Center. We were initially trained by them way back when in the early 2000s. So there's a lot of similarities. We also have an art room, hospital playroom, because a lot of our young people have had some kind of contact with hospital healthcare settings due to the death in their families. We've got the music, the costumes, space for creative play. Just whatever they need to do, we want to make sure that they're able to do it here. And when you're speaking about music, last month we had our music therapist, Jay Swanson, presented, and Jay said the same thing. You don't have to be a musician to engage with music. They were talking about, like you said, beating the drum. They had a young person who was writing rap lyrics over some pre-made music, creating playlists, again, continuing bonds and honoring that person in different ways. So yeah, there's so much. You do not have to be an artist or a musician to engage with these, especially when you're supporting your grief or the grief of a young person in your life.
Absolutely. I know for grief camp, I've worked with grief camps for probably 20 years now. And one of the things that I love, one of my favorite intervention is getting everybody at the camp to create their label, their care label. So just like we have in our clothes, we have a care label that says gentle wash, wash cold, whatever, do not dry clean, allowing our children and ourselves to create a label, a care label. What do I need when I'm really struggling? And the children, because our children are different. Of course they are. So some children want cuddles. Some children want, leave me the heck alone. I want to go in my room. And that's okay. So if they can express that in a care label, then their care labels are something the entire family is aware of. So when Sally Sue is struggling, then everybody in the family knows, oh, okay, when she's struggling, she wants an extra hug. Or when Johnny is struggling and wants to be left alone, then they know, oh, well, Johnny's struggling. So we're going to say, okay, we're going to honor the fact that you want to be left alone right now.
Yeah, I love that. You've got me thinking, because in our centers, we're looking at families where we've got people in our spousal and partner loss groups. They've lost their partner. We have a child loss group, and then we've got our young people who have either experienced the death of a parent or caregiver or a sibling, and this really does make Mother's Day and Father's Day different, for them and for their families. And I love the idea of these care labels as just a conversation, leading up to whether it's Mother's Day and Father's Day or any of the winter holidays, just those times in the calendar that we can kind of predict. Grief can be unpredictable day to day and moment to moment, but there are these moments on the calendar where we can be intentional about having these conversations and prepare. I was wondering, do you have any other ideas? Because I know we've got other centers. I think I saw Hospice Center, other organizations like us. What are some of the things that we could be doing to support our families? What are the conversations or things that we could provide them?
I think one of the most important things is helping the families, especially the adults, not shy away from the conversations because we're grieving and we don't want to maybe cry in front of our child, or we don't want to be angry in front of our child. And yet by us owning our own emotions when we're with our children, it makes things so different. So having those conversations, I know in therapy, this is something we do a lot, is helping people identify what their own emotions are and how they're going to have that conversation. So role plays are awesome because the parent often feels a little apprehensive about that conversation with their kids. So let's role play it out, and I'm going to play a 3-year-old and we're going to do this. And that way we feel more connected to, and less, we don't want to take our anxiety and put it way up here when we're having those conversations, because then it's confusing to our children. They're telling me I should feel my feelings, and yet they're like anxious off the chain. And so they're confused. So really remembering those things, also knowing that when we're having groups, whatever a group is for us, whether it's one at the church or elsewhere, keeping emotional health at the forefront, because oftentimes I've heard so many people come in and tell me, I can't be angry because according to my spiritual belief, I can't get angry. Well, the reality is we're going to have angry feelings. So kind of think through how you want to address emotions with the people participating in your groups, knowing that they're going to have questions. They're going to say, okay, how does this make sense given our religious beliefs or our cultural beliefs? So making sure you're kind of thinking those through as the professional working with these people, because they're curious, and it's not that they're avoiding, is they can't figure their way out of it or their way through it. So asking really helpful questions. I'm a huge proponent of Socratic questioning, open-ended questions. How does that feel in your body? What do you experience? What thought comes in that is related to your religious belief that feels like that's incongruent for you? And once we can help an adult through those conversations, then they can take those conversations and bring them to their children, honoring their culture, their beliefs, their tradition, and their spirituality.
Thank you. I was also thinking about the schools. I feel like parent holidays are big in schools. Some are probably, I think, a little better about it than others. But I was wondering, what do you recommend to your clients or anyone that you partner with? How can we interact with schools and let them know, what our children might need in that space around parent holidays?
It's an interesting question, because oftentimes, depending on the age of our child, some children don't want anybody at school to know that they've had a loss, because they don't want to be the odd kid out. I will always be the girl who had her brother die, and they don't want that. So they ask their parents, please don't tell anybody. So now the parent is really doing a balancing act, trying to navigate those scenarios. So really allowing the child to say, we all know when the holidays are coming. It's not something that's going to sneak up on us. So allowing us to have those conversations with our children and say, what do you really need at school? And allowing the child to come up with what they're needing, because we can assume and presume, but we don't really know unless we engage that conversation. And also saying, how would it be for you and I to meet with your teacher and to share some of this before we get to that holiday? And oftentimes the children are more engaged in that kind of situation because they have a voice. They're being listened to, they're being understood, they're being validated, and they get to make a choice instead of something being imposed upon them. So I think those are vital things. And if we as a teacher or a professional in a situation know, then even ourselves engaging the parent and saying, what is it that we need to do differently for your child during this holiday time? And if the parent says, I don't know, then helping the parent be able to have that conversation. And if the parent is not up for it for whatever reason, even allowing the teacher to spend a time with that child one-to-one privately, so that no one's aware, and say, what is it that you need different from me? Because we're gonna do a picture of the family and everybody's going to draw one. How is that for you? Do you want me to give you a different assignment? Do you want to do something different? So really giving voice to our children is so helpful, because it helps them assert their needs moving forward in life when we honor them when they're young.
Yeah, the artwork makes me think about some of the young people that we have here. When they're doing these assignments, they will include family members who are no longer physically present. And we have some educators who are great at sort of navigating that, and some who are like, well, they're dead, they can't, that's not right. Or, they're doing a Mother's Day craft and they make it for their mother who has died, and they make it for them because they still feel that strong bond with their person. So just normalizing that. And I think a lot of what you're saying is communication, just being able to talk.
Absolutely. And also when we have those kind of pictures of mom and mom has died, what is the parent doing when the picture's coming home?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
picture treated just like all the other pictures with excitement and tell me more about it and let's put it on the refrigerator? Or do we feel awkward and we kind of shush it? And then the child gets that reaction response, and then they're like, oh, I did something wrong, I can't talk about this. So it's really all the adults in their environment kind of thinking of them.
Hmm. Annette, were there any other questions in the chat? I'm just being mindful of time.
No, we just had Arthur, and you interacted with him, but Arthur was saying culturally, children really should be taught their family's spiritual traditions and their traditions regarding the afterlife. But also, there's a caveat to that. He said, expect many questions from young ones. We don't want to scare them about heaven or God, etc. We don't want them blaming God or heaven for taking their loved one, and perspective is important and difficult. He also loved the idea of the care label, as did I.
Yeah, and I think he asked a good question, because this happens a lot, with the young people that we work with. They will ask a question like the one in the chat, how is Granny getting to heaven on a plane? And we try very hard not to give answers here. We'll say, well, how do you think she got there?
Exactly.
Tell me about it. I want to know more. And we just say, stay compassionately curious, but don't feel like you have to have all the answers when you're dealing with any griever. There's nothing you could say or do that's going to immediately fix what's happening for them. So don't even try. Just always try to give it back to them. I just try to stay curious and not put myself in a position of authority where I've got answers about Granny. Yeah.
Exactly. And we don't. And also it teaches our children that they're not supposed to know everything either. If mom and dad or my teacher or my priest doesn't know everything, then how am I supposed to know everything? So it kind of gives them a sense of relief. I don't have to know everything.
Yeah, that's absolutely the right word, of relief. Absolutely. So just looking at the time, I am going to bring my screen share back up just for a moment before we fully wrap up, just to let you all know about our final webinar for this season, our 2024 wrap up for the school year. This will be with Katie Huey, a grief educator. This one is called As We Carry On, Using Words to Explore Your Grief with a Compassionate Lens. I think it's going to be wonderful. If you like writing, I think this will be for you. As always, we will record this. It will be up on YouTube. Those of you who attended live, you will receive your certificate of attendance. As you look in the chat, you will see there's a survey, resources, and the link to the upcoming webinar next month. You can always go to good-grief.org/resources, check out our YouTube. And if you have any questions, reach out to education@good-grief.org. You'll reach Annette and I. And I just want to end this from a place of gratitude. Thank you so much for presenting to our people. I think this will be a valuable resource. I'm excited to get the slides into everyone's hands. Really appreciated your presence. And yes, Annette, do you have anything else?
I think you wrapped it up very nicely. Thank you, Dr. Damita. I really love the idea of care labels, not just in the realm of grief, but just in general. Sometimes we're constantly asking our children, well, what is it? What's wrong with you? How are you feeling? And they're like, I don't know. And it's really important for us to kind of give them those words, right? And kind of help them out. And what better way to do that than, this is the best way to care for me at this time. It really gives them that agency. So that's a huge takeaway for me today. So I'm extremely grateful for that. Thank you.
Absolutely. It was lovely. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I hope everyone's able to benefit in the way that is perfect for them.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, let me stop this recording.